one day before the baptism of Jesus, the church invites us to reflect on John the Baptist. There is no person in the scriptures who is a better precursor, a better pointer to Jesus than John the Baptist. And in the Gospel of John, chapter 3, verses 22 to 30, which is our gospel for today, we are given the final witness and the final appearance of John the Baptist in the Gospel of John. And in his witness, John says three things about Jesus here. The first is he is very clear that Jesus has descended from above. In his prologue, the evangelist tells us in chapter 1, verse 14, that the Logos became sarx. The Word became flesh. And John the Baptist reiterates that when he tells us that Jesus has indeed descended from heaven, become incarnate, become a human being in every sense of the word, but also that he has given up the privilege of being God, given up the privilege of being Son of God, and taken on humanity in its entirety. So Jesus is aware, and John the Baptist is aware, that Jesus has descended from heaven and is now on this earth. Besides the fact that Jesus has descended from heaven, John says two other things. One is about himself and Jesus. Himself, he says, he is a friend, and about Jesus, he says, he is the bridegroom. At a wedding, the friend of the bridegroom always stays in the background. The friend of the bridegroom does not take center stage. The friend of the bridegroom is there to assist the bridegroom, is there to help the bridegroom, is there to aid the bridegroom in whatever the bridegroom may need. By calling himself the friend of the bridegroom, this is what John the Baptist is saying about himself. He is willing to be at the service of Jesus. He is willing to see to every need of Jesus. He is willing to come to the aid of Jesus and will be there for whatever Jesus wants. And finally, because he knows his place, because he knows he is a friend and not the bridegroom, the third thing he says about himself and once again about Jesus is that he must decrease, John must decrease, and the Lord must increase. And this last point which he makes about the Lord indicates the kind of self-assurance that John the Baptist had about himself, the kind of acceptance of who he was that he had about himself. He would never want to usurp the role of another. John the Baptist was a figure who knew exactly where his authority ended, who knew exactly who he was, and therefore who knew exactly what he had to do. There are many of us who often compare ourselves with others. He or she is richer than I am. He or she has more things than I have. He or she is more talented or gifted than I am. And the Lord is saying to us through this manifestation of John the Baptist that we have to know who we are. We have to be content with what we have. We can glory in our selfhood like John the Baptist did. We need to keep realizing that we are friends of the bridegroom, and the Lord must increase and we must decrease. Will you realize that you are precious in yourself? Will you realize that you need not compare with anyone else? Will you glory in your selfhood today?